different genres. These are some of my self-published books. So, for instance, this one is relief printmaking. Relief is linocut, woodcut. This is a brand new book I've just published in Tagla. It's the thickest book so far, hardcover. So in Tagla is etching, engraving, dry point. This is monotype technique, printmaking as well. So printmaking, monotype is a fusion. It's a marriage between painting and printmaking, because I paint on a plate of copper or plexiglass, and then what I paint, printed using one of my etching presses. And some other things. This is like fun project I'm still working on every now and then, coffee causes. So this was my own idea, and so one morning I was sitting at a local coffee shop in Fallbrook where I used to live, and I would go to this little coffee house every morning, and I would sketch in my sketchbook while sipping coffee, and then one day I touched the surface of the coffee cozy, you know, that little sleeve to protect you from hot. So, and then I thought, oh, it's a nice texture. I made a mark, and it's like, oh my God. And so this book is, is full of those projects. So, yeah. And as a matter of fact, I'm scheduled to have a solo show at Atelier, small gallery, Little Italy area. One French lady runs it, and so she offered me to have a show specifically for my coffee causes. So all these, so as I said, they show, like, basically they represent different techniques that I use, and I like to try different things because different styles, different media, different genres provide me with different ways of self-expression and the different means of expression. So it's good for my brain, I think. So it keeps me excited always. And all these are for sale. These are coffee table books. Christmas is approaching, so keep that in mind. Also, I brought a few of my paintings. Today we are going to talk about oil painting. So this is one of these are two of the latest ones I did. So in these pieces, I mostly focus on color, texture, and then this is what we will be talking today. Because the way I feel about my own work, I was always more comfortable with line, with drawing, etching, engraving. So these are very detailed pieces, very controlled. So lots of details and you know, very thin line, and that always was very easy for me, natural. But oftentimes when I paint and I use watercolor, tempera, gouache, acrylic, oil, so when I paint, oftentimes to me it feels like instead of painting, instead of pushing that colored dirt, I tend to start drawing, start being too controlled with my paint. And so I always like, I never liked that, and I try to loosen up in my own paintings. So, and I've discovered, I've developed this very cool exercise for myself, which basically, when I feel that I am not very loose, I do one of these, and it helps me to loosen up. So when I specifically give myself a task to be looser with the paint, to try not to draw with it, not to control my brush, but push that colored dirt on the surface of the canvas. So that's what it's going to be about. And also, parallel with that, I will be talking about color, how color works, how it is important if you want to do color, if your focus is color. It's not enough just to find harmony. It's also necessary to have a strong tonal value arrangement. So I will very quickly try to talk about this, and maybe most of you are familiar with this, but really quickly, like, this is a color wheel. We have cool colors, we have warm colors, we have complementary colors, which are three pairs: green and red, yellow and violet, or yellow and purple, and then so green, red, yellow, and purple, and then blue and orange. These are three pairs, so complementary. Why complementary? Because they complement each other. So if you put red next to green, they will make each other look stronger, look more powerful, you know. So, but you can also just take two analogous colors, which could be like red and orange, or yellow green and blue green, and you could build your painting based on analogous colors. So we have complementary, we have analogous, and then we have tonal values. We have a tonal value scale here, which is from very light, as in this case this paper, to darkest tonal value we can get, darkest black, right? So this is a gradation. Very light, light, slightly darker, even darker, darker yet, super dark, okay? So, and so when we use our colors, we can make them lighter, darker, and it's not, it doesn't necessarily mean that in order for it to be darker, we need to mix it with black, right? So we can take red and mix it with a little bit of violet, or we can take a red and mix it with a little bit of, like, let's say, raw umber. Okay, so this is what we can do. And of course, we can always have a choice of mixing that red with black, making it darker, right? So these are things. Tonal values, complementary colors, analogous colors, and then this is talking about hue. So basically is sort of like saturation, because if we take green, it could be very bright saturated green, or it could be kind of grayish green, these kind of things. And so values, hue, colors. Okay, and so before I start my oil demonstration, I don't necessarily always do it for myself. I don't necessarily make a value sketch before I do my paintings. In fact, in most cases, I don't do that. But in order to make my demonstration, in order to make my talk a little bit more informative, so I'll talk a little bit about values. So I'll sort of make monochromatic, black and white sketch. My plan, how am I going to use tonal values? Because I kind of have a plan. Most likely I'm going to use blue and yellow today, just like two complementaries. And I'll build my painting using mostly those two colors, blue and yellow, because these are two complementaries. And also I'll use black and white. So when I will start my painting, mostly I'll be working with blue and yellow, making it darker, lighter, trying to mix them with one another. Later in my painting, it is very likely that I will take maybe one or even two more colors, which will be so-called spice colors. Just like when we cook something, we make a soup, we put all the necessary ingredients, we did all this timing correctly, at the end we try it. Oh, everything is there, but something is missing. So then we put a little bit of spice. Ah, that's perfect. So that's what spice color. Okay, just like cooking. All right. So let's say I want to paint flowers, and let's say this will be my square painting, because I have square 12 by 12 today. So in this case, I have toned paper. Is everything working okay?
I'm going to turn the sound off of the image.
Okay. Just let me know if we need to take a break. Okay, so I brought this toned paper. So it's not white. It has this middle value. I'll use its natural tone for middle value for my sketch. For darker values, naturally, I'll be using black, different gradations of it. And then for white, I'll use some white, whatever I have here. So let's say I'll have some sort of vase. stripy like this, or it doesn't have to. We will see. I'll improvise. I don't have a very, straight plan. So, when I will start painting, very likely I'll be improvising. So what I did here, I've used the darkest value of my black. Okay, then for medium value, for neutral, I use natural tone of my paper. Then I'm sure there will be some flowers, and I think for those I'll use medium value. Okay. And then very likely I'll use some very light value, maybe for flower here, maybe for some highlights here, maybe for, if I decide it's going to be stripy, maybe I'll do it like this here for some highlights. Okay. So this is basically the idea. So my flowers will be lighter and darker than the background. The background will be medium value. And then somewhere here, I might be using a very dark value. So gradation of values, there's no color yet, but we will start working on it soon. Okay, so this is plan of attack, something like this. So I just want to emphasize that when we work with color, because oftentimes you hear, oh look, this is a nice color. The answer to that is yes, it looks nice, but it really depends on what you will put that color with. You see what I mean? Because you cannot take a color just abstract and look, okay, it's nice color. It could be nice or it could be ugly depending on its environment, on its surrounding. So when we paint, when you work with color, it is important to think about color relationships, but it is in order to make that work, in order for your color to work, you cannot ignore the value. So if you want your painting or drawing or whatever to work, if you work with color, yes, color is very important, but color is not going to happen unless you put it on good value. So there has to be a value arrangement. And value arrangement doesn't mean that, like in my case, I have very light, I have very dark, and I have medium. But it's going to be in this case. But there could be some other cases. For instance, if you want to paint a piece about let's say June gloom, then very likely there will not be much contrast. So in that case, you will work in the middle somewhere. There will be some darks, but they will not be deep darks. There will be some mediums and some lights, but lights will not be super bright, right? And then if we take pre-morning situation, so it's going to be all dark. Some will be slightly lighter, some darker, some medium still. So we have always dark, light, and medium. But in case of pre-morning, it's going to be everything will be in the dark key. Okay. In this case, I'm going to use my whole scale from very light to very dark with everything in the middle. Okay. All gradations. And when I will start, I will only start with two colors, plus black, plus white. Okay. And then later we will see. Okay, so I'll remove my charcoal. Now I'll start messing with oil paint here. I didn't used to use gloves, but these days I use them because it's always, if you do it full time, it's better to protect yourself. You know, if you paint occasionally, some paint gets on you, fine, but if you do it full time, it's not good. Not good. So I'll be using this light, which I bought not long ago, and I'm very happy with it. This is a very fancy light, and actually it comes with this. And later, when I have a finished piece, we will experiment. But because the beauty of this fixture is that we can make light very bright, such as this. We can make light slightly darker, slightly lighter, very bright. Plus we can go cool and we can go warm. See what I mean? It ain't cheap, but you know, it worth every penny I paid for it. So I'm very excited about it. So right now I'll just put it on max, and then I will lower it down a little bit so it's not too hard on my eyes. This, okay? So I'll take this blue and this yellow. These are the colors of Ukrainian flag. Let's see what we can do with that. I've used the same color combination and same value idea here. So this is based on blue and yellow. And then this one I paint on July 4th. And so you understand what's going on here, right? We have all colors of American flag plus a hint of how it looks like actually, you see? So this one entirely was made with blue and red, plus black, plus white. And if you look closer, you can see how even though only two colors, plus black, plus white, were used, but you see how with two colors only, you can actually make painting by using different gradations, values, and by mixing little bit with little bit. So before I start painting, actually, I think I'll kind of make a little experiment here on my canvas just to show you what I mean. I'll take palette knife for this, and I hope everything is visible for you, but here is yellow, right? Full strength level, yellow, straight from the tube. Now, I'll take my blue. This is my blue from the tube, straight from the tube. Now I'll take my blue and I'll add a little bit of white to it. Isn't it great when you get this brand new tube? It's like candies. So then I'll take a little bit of white and mix it with a little bit of blue. So sort of medium value. So this will show my blue mixed with white. Okay? Now I'll take my yellows from the tube, mix it with white, trying to make it medium. Here is my yellow mixed with white. Okay? Now what I'll do, I'll take my yellow and mix it with my blue. I will get some sort of dark greenish looking color. Then I'll take a little bit of white, mix it with white, and you will see how it's more greenish. Can you see it okay on the screen? Oh, okay. But you know, if you have to, you can always move around here. So this is what I got, right? And I can continue. I can now use a little bit of black. I have Payne's gray here for my black today. So I can take a little bit of white, mix it with a little bit of gray, and it will give me gray. You see? So, and now I can take my yellow and mix it with a little bit of black. And it's going to give me a slightly different shade of green. So I'm doing this little demo here on the same canvas that I will be using for my painting, just to show you how, with only two pigments, yellow and green, and using a little bit of white, a little of black, and I can continue with this, and I'm not going to, but even right now, you see the variety. You see what we can get as far as color, saturation, value, by using only two pigments, plus black, plus white. So in order, you know how when you are a beginner, you have your palette, you have a brand new set of paint, and you put everything you have on your palette, and it looks great on the palette. But then when you have all that variety, that makes chances to mix muddy color much higher. So when all you have on your palette, and we call it limited palette, when all you have is two pigments plus black plus white, it really cuts your it makes it more likely that your painting will look good and fresh and harmonious. So oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes less means more, could mean more, okay? So this is one of the things this demonstration will be about. So now I'll just take this and I'll just make it thinner. Okay, and then I'll start working. I decided, and that's what I showed on my sketch, I decided that my background is going to be kind of medium. So I'll take my white and we'll start creating my background. I'm not going to make preliminary drawing on this one at all. I'll just start working with thick paint without using any turpentine or linseed oil. And there is a reason why I'm doing this. And the reason is I plan to make quick demonstration today, and I want to make it in pasta. I want to make it very thick. And so normally, otherwise, I would probably start with some turpentine. I would start with loose paint mixed with turpentine, but not today, because I want my background, I want my support to be thick and not runny for my future applications of paint. You see? So I will be using white and mixing it with drops of my two pigments, which are blue and yellow. And I will not stop until I finish over the canvas. I do this, there are several reasons I do this. One of them I've already described. I'm doing this because I want to create a medium value support, medium value base for my future layers of paint. I want it to be thick, not runny. So later, when I will apply my paint, it will stick to it, because one of the things I want to achieve, I want to make it textural, not only color value, but also texture, special texture of oil painting. And as I mentioned at the beginning, I've developed this exercise for myself just so I can loosen up with my painting, because I tend to be a little bit kind of too controlled with my paint. I tend oftentimes to draw with my brush instead of painting with it. And as you see, I'm using variations of temperature, some warmer, some cooler, some bluish, some yellowish. At the same time, it helps me to get started, to warm up my hand, and also to try different mixtures of colors. So that way I'm more ready for future applications, because I can see by mixing them randomly, I get a better idea about what I can and cannot do with these two pigments only, plus black, plus white. So later, you see how I put in them in abstract random way, and so I kind of like the edges when two different colors, two different values connect, the edges are very smooth. So later, when I will paint on top of this base, I will not necessarily cover all of it. As a matter of fact, I'll leave some of it, so that will create an illusion of depth. Just like in this painting, you can see right away that, see, whatever I did the same way. You see how, for example, this color and this color, they're very close in value, but edges are soft. And later, on top of it, I went over with more harder edges. So that creates vibration, and it creates difference in edges. Hard edge here, automatically it advances. Automatically we feel that it's closer. But the background is not just plain, monotonous. It has some variations. So it adds to this illusion of depth. And I do it randomly and without any kind of plan. I mean, I have a plan, but it's not, it's very loose, you know. It's, I have plenty of space for spontaneity. So it's basically like an abstract painting. If I was to paint an abstract right now, then the solution is here already. I mean, it's just the basic idea. So because in abstract, if you work with color, then 80% of success of your painting is going to be a color. But as we mentioned before, color means nothing without the right value. Okay, you see how it's abstract? So at this point, I'm ready to go ahead and start painting more opaque using harder edges. I already started with this yellow, so that will work for some of my flowers there. Now I have to decide about my vase, whether it's going to be stripy or just a see-through glass. What do you feel? Should we make it stripy or should we? Okay, let's make it stripy. Well, when I asked you, I understand what could happen because there could be different opinions. I just cheated a little bit. I only had cobalt, but now I added a little bit of ultramarine. So ultramarine is going to be darker in value, darker than cobalt. And also, ultramarine is slightly warmer than cobalt because it's slightly closer to purple. So it's just, it's not cheating, and just because I will use couple of blues and couple of yellows, plus black plus white. But I decided to take my blue because my ultramarine, because ultramarine is darker in value, and I thought I would use stripy vase, and I want to make it, I want to use a darker value for it. I'll just start ultramarine. And then later we will see. Right now it's a little bit too bright. I feel like playing it down a little bit, making its hue a little bit less aggressive. So I'll add a little bit of black, of Payne's gray to it. A little bit of Payne's gray. And then I'll use a little bit of white plus Payne's gray to make some variations. So it's not just ultramarine, but it would give me some variations of that blue. Okay. Now I'll go ahead and add some flowers. I'll take pure yellow, cadmium yellow, and already I've added some yellow here. And at this point, so I mentioned before that when I did my background, I deliberately made it random, and I used very subtle gradations of value. Not very dark, very light, but kind of grayish medium value gradations, a little bit lighter, a little bit darker. So that will work for us later because some parts of it I'm not going to cover. And then later I added few spots of yellow. So, but at this time, and also I've mentioned before that I fused the edges, the borders, the edges of different colors. I fused them together, so edges are very soft here. But now for my flowers here, I will use very hard edges, See? So as soon as I put that, immediately it advances. Even though it is not very dark in value, but we still already feel that this petal, which will be petal. So we immediately feel how it advances, it gets closer. So that is farther, this is closer. And as I said, I've developed this exercise for myself for loosening up, for making my paintings less controlled. And that is why I'm kind of trying not to draw with my brush. I'm trying to make bold brush strokes because I want it to be spontaneous and I want it to be fresh, and I don't want it to look over-controlled, very loose. Okay? So now I'm going to use yellow and blue flowers. I'll take my cobalt, I'll take just a little touch of white, and now cobalt's going to be darker in value than yellow. So let's say my flower will be here. See, immediately as soon as I put my brush stroke, immediately it advances because I have a hard edge here. And those edges are very soft, so immediately we feel there is space, even though we have very minimal information yet. Okay, something like this. Now here, I'll put this flower behind the yellow. Okay, so now I'll use a little bit of ultramarine, and I'll try to model my flowers a little bit, so they're not just some sort of spots, but also I want to give them some form, you know, like as if we have a light. So let's say the source of the light will be here on the left. I mean the source of the light, not this one, but the source of the light in our imaginary space there. Because right now I'm working in a space. I work on a two-dimensional surface of my canvas, yet I'm trying to create an illusion of space there, right? So that's what I'm doing. I'll take the same brush and I'll mix my blue that I still have on it. I will mix it with green. So this time I'll suggest some leaves. And I don't want them to be very vivid bright green. I want it to be rather grayish.
When you say you're mixing your blue with your green, are you actually mixing it with yellow to make green? The blue and yellow?
Well, by mixing my yellow with my blue and alone, I can achieve pretty dark or medium value of green. And but in this case, if I will mix my blue and my yellow straight from the tube, plus a little bit of white, my green will be sort of too bright for me. I don't want it to be too bright, because mostly I want to suggest, so this, yes, this is kind of greenish, but I don't want it to be bright green. I want it to be subtle green, because otherwise, if I will introduce bright green here, we're not going to like it, because it's going to be a little bit too much. And maybe at the end, I will add some brighter green, but I want to play safe right now, because I want to build it up gradually. And then at the end, when everything is there, just like my example with the soup, when we cook that soup, we put all the ingredients, and we watch the time, and everything is there. At the end, we try it, something is missing. Okay, boom, 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 a little bit of spice, boom. That's exactly what it is. That's my grandmother's recipe, you know. That was her secret. So same here. I plan to build everything gradually without playing rough. And then at the end, when everything is safe and nice and everything is established, I'll say, something is missing. Let me try this, boom, and there will be a tension. So that is a very exciting way of painting. You know, great painter Titian used to say, for a great painter, in order to create a strong painting, he only needs, or she needs, one color, which is red. Because if you have your red plus black plus white, that's all you need. Because imagine, we have very bright red, we have black, and we have white. Let's say we mix our black with white. We get nice medium, maybe lighter than medium value of gray. Then we cover the whole canvas with that gray, and then somewhere in the corner we put very bright red spot. We were just talking about it, complementaries. So a little bit of juicy red will make a lot of medium gray, will make that gray look the opposite of red, which will be greenish or bluish. So that's the idea. So even by varying your values, you can still paint. I don't know if you've ever seen, like in good museum, good engraving, when all there is paper, color of the paper, plus black, but variations of value. So oftentimes it's so deep and so complicated, complex in value, so many different gradations of value, then by looking at it, you sometimes get an illusion that there is a color. There's no color. Simply by varying your value correctly, we can make an illusion that there is color. Imagine what we can do with one color if we can add that color. You see? So only red, Titian said. That's all you need. So let's keep playing with this. See, I'm trying not to control my paint too much. I'm trying to pushing it on the surface of the canvas rather than trying to be precise and trying to draw with my brush. I'm trying to paint. Painting is different. It's not like drawing. It's pushing that colored dirt. Painting can be very precise, it can be photorealistic, but that's a different story. So what we're trying to do right now, I'm trying to demonstrate and illustrate that little exercise that I've developed for myself actually, in order to make my paintings more spontaneous and not over-controlled. Okay, it's enough for now. Now let's make that yellow a little bit more, the yellow flowers, let's work a little bit more on their shapes. At this point, I have my yellow, cadmium, and I want to make it slightly darker in few areas, just so that will help me sculpt the flowers, suggest their shapes a little bit better. But I feel that for shadows on my yellow, I want it to be a little bit darker plus warmer, not cooler. But with what I have here, I can make, in order to make it darker, I would only make it cooler. Because to make it darker, I would have to mix it with either black or blue. Both would make it darker but cooler. but I want warm. Okay, so what do? I go, okay, and see, this is my discipline. I never put on palette more than I need. I only put on my palette what I cannot do without. You see, at this point, I have to take something else. I know very likely at the end for the spice, I'm going to use red. So because I know it, I'll just go ahead and grab it right now, because this red is darker than my yellow. So it will make my yellow darker and warmer, and that's exactly what I want.
Just cad red?
Yeah, just cadmium. Slightly darker. I'll put a little bit of linseed oil in my container. Oh, here it is. Slightly darker, slightly warmer. But right now, I feel like I'm not completely satisfied with the value, which means I'll add a little bit of black. I want some of that red be darker yet. And darker, and at the same time, a little bit less red. So I'll add a little bit of black into my red. It will make it darker and less saturated. Okay, now that I did it, I have to make a decision about the table. So I can go ahead and use this, add a little bit more black, make it look warm, but most likely, I think, to get started, I will just start with just neutral gray. Just neutral gray. And then we will see. Just neutral gray, and then we will see. I don't want that line to be like super straight, so because I want it to be loose. So I'll just go ahead and play these little things here. Okay, and then let's suggest that there is reflection on the table. And I'll go ahead and I'll use the whole strength, the whole darkness of my Payne's gray. So that will make our tonal value gradation even wider, our scale even wider. Because right now this is the darkest value there is. Okay? We will see later, we might change that, but for now it works. Let's see what else we can do. I think, okay, I'll just add a little bit more of that, a little bit more of leaves. For this kind of exercise, for this painting, it is kind of important to know your brushes. When you have your brushes, try to see what you can and cannot do with them, you know. And picking right brushes, knowing your brushes is very important. See, I'm trying to make minimum movement with my brushes, minimum. Only what is necessary. I'm not trying to draw with my brush. I'm just trying to push. No, listen up. When I draw, I go like this. You know, when I make my etchings, I work with the needle. Sometimes I have magnifying glass, and I'm very controlled. And I'm very comfortable with that. But with painting, oftentimes I feel like I'm drawing, I'm not painting. So that's why I've developed this. It helps me loosen up. So, because oftentimes you are better off just with suggesting, because people, for example, these are flowers. People know flowers, they saw flowers. So when you just suggest them and when you give that, they will understand, okay, these are flowers. And then if you have a good, successful color, which is based on a correct value, and everything is done there for people, and without saying too much, with just suggesting things, with leaving some space for their imagination, then they will like it, they will want to take it home. Because oftentimes when we paint, we try to be too controlled. We try to be like very too realistic, and which is nothing wrong with that. Nothing is wrong with the good photorealistic painting, if that's your plan. But what we are doing right now is different. See how I am like, when I'm doing my leaves, I'm not worried about giving too much information as far as if it's connected to stem or not. You know, I'm just suggesting because, as I said, people will be able to participate in it, and they will be able to, you know, finish it in your imagination, sort of. So that leaves some space for their participation. Okay. So at this time, I'll have to make decision of this. I think I'll use, okay. And then also one more thing. Now I think I want to put few very light flowers. Few very light ones. Well, like just pure white with a little bit of warmth. So I'll just take pure white here, and I'll try to apply it somewhere. Let's say here. See, my background is actually very light, but this is very even lighter. So, which makes our tonal value scale even wider. So now we have lightest white, lightest tonal value. But just using white is not going to be a good idea because I want to make it slightly warm, slightly yellowish, and maybe slightly reddish because we already have red on our palette. These are very subtle changes in temperature, changes in hue, but they make a lot of difference. They make our painting more painterly, deeper in value, and slightly more complicated in color. See, when I'm applying my brush stroke, I'm not like doing this. I'm just doing this, this, this. So that way it forces me not to draw but paint, pushing that colored dirt. Okay. Now I know also that I will have to do something here. So let me think about it. Most likely I have choices. I can just do it, make it white, I can make it bluish, or yet I can take, as I said before, we will use couple of blues, couple of yellows. Blues, it's going to be family of blue and family of yellow, these two families only. And then later, I've already used some red, but later, very likely there will be more. So I'm gonna go ahead and take my something close to cerulean, and I'll try it. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, we can always scrape it off. That's the advantage of working in oils. You can never ruin it. You can always scrape it off, paint it over, and so on. So I'll take a little bit of cerulean. It's gonna be slightly too kind of raw, so that's why I'll add just one touch of Payne's gray to make it more subtle. And then I'm gonna use it here. Now I feel I need it darker. You see, I just added new blue. Immediately it made my color a little bit more spicy. A little bit more spicy. And now that it's a little bit more spicy, I'll suggest that some of it is in a reflection on the table. And then there will be some influence here. Okay? Now, because we already have our red here, I'll do something else. Painting is a pure fun. It's just such a simple way to, I don't know, it just always works for me. Simple way to make yourself happy without using any kind of things like wine or anything else of that nature. Wine is good, but this does the same, or can do the same. See, for this in the middle of flower, we have this little area, and I deliberately use complementary there to make it even more exciting. Okay, so now at this point, I'll try something else. I'll take one of my palette knives and I'll try to make some very thin lines, suggesting those stems. Do you say stem, right? Stem? Uh-huh. Okay, so we're doing it. Now let's see what else we can do. We should still, still a few things.
Are you using any linseed oil in these?
Yes. I started without turpentine or linseed oil, then I added a little bit of linseed oil simply because sometimes I want it to be a little bit more loose, the paint. Otherwise, for this kind of technique, if you just use your paint straight from the tube, is good. So I said before, it's important to know your brushes. It is also important to know your paint, because some paint, depending even often at its brand, sometimes one brand yellow is more soft than the other brand paint, you know what I mean? So when you know these kind of things, it helps, because sometimes you need some of your paint to be looser or more flexible. Then you could use one or another type of your paint. So in some areas I'm going to use real impasto, real thick paint. So that adds to this kind of idea. This adds to my, so it helps me make my painting kind of more loose and not only about color and value, but also about the texture. So when we feel the paint, when we are not trying to make everything nice and smooth, and we are doing just the opposite, we are showing our paint. We're showing, look, yes, this was done with paint, and that paint is thick, and it was done with the brush, and look, we even have the marks of that brush. So that makes your painting more kind of organic, you know what I mean? It looks more organic. There was a very interesting story. You know, it was not always like that, because before photography was invented, most artists, especially like, say, if we take Flemish artists like in Netherlands, you know, all those still lifes where you see a lemon and it looks absolutely real. There is like drops of water on the table. There is even fly sitting on that lemon, and there is a shadow under the fly. So part of the reason for that was that artists were sort of, in a way, magicians, because there was no photography. So when they painted things for wealthy people, and at that time Netherlands, they were doing great because they were middle people between Asia and Europe. So their economy was booming. And so there was a lot of wealthy people who wanted to impress their guests. So look what they got. So, and then their guests would say, oh, who painted? Igor Koutsenko. Okay, I'll hire him too. So you know what I mean. So it was. That's why we have all these European museums and American museums full of these beautiful, well-done still lifes with very hyper-realistic things. Because back then, one of the reasons it was so popular because there was no photography. So, and when people would see it, they would be amazed. Like, look, this is a real miracle. It's flat canvas, you can touch it, yet it looks real. But then later, when photography was invented, artists quickly realized that they will have to do something else. And there were many other reasons for that. So, and then on the edge, in France and Paris, where all the art history changes were taking place at that time, there were many great academically trained artists who were able to to paint nature, to make an illusion, so it's like absolutely real. And then there was this painter Manet, and I think it was him, yeah, and he painted something and he presented it for Salon. They had like annual Salon where like best paintings were put, academical. And then that created a lot of, that created a scandal, that created a big fight, because many like people who wrote for newspapers and magazines, they said, look at this he can't even paint. And some, like one critic said, because Manet painted a portrait of Émile Zola, great French writer, and some critics said, look at his pens on the painting. They're not made of fabric. And then Manet replied, of course they're not made of fabric, they're made of paint. And that was a very good example, because that's when revolution started. Because it was not necessarily to make things photorealistic anymore. And artists started focusing on some other things. Texture, impressionism. Where did impressionism come from? Because it was not necessarily anymore to make an illusion of reality. So artists said, okay, let's make impression. Like, how do you feel when you see these flowers? You like, let's paint so people could like literally smell them and feel the atmosphere. So it's not necessarily the reason for artists to try to make it look photorealistic disappeared. So that's why one of the reasons why these things were happening. See what I mean? So yes, in this case, I'm not trying to make it look like a real leaf. I'm saying, look, this is a paint. I put my brush this brush has hair. I take my brush and I just do this, you know. And so that's what it is about. One part of what it is. Could please somebody tell me like how much more time we have?
It is now 3:25.
So
40 minutes.
40 more minutes? More than enough.
4 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, more than.
I'll probably want to leave a little time for the drawing and questions.
Sure, questions, and then I'll have to pack and everything. So yeah, I just needed to know because it gives me a better idea of what I can do here. So right now I'm trying to be more precise a little bit. I'm suggesting like the source of light. These are highlights on this vase. Now in few areas what I can do, I can add a little bit more to my background there. For instance, right here, behind this flower, I want the yellow petals to be a little bit more visible. So I've mixed slightly darker shade of my background, and I'm just adding a little bit in back there, so that will add some depth. And see how when I'm doing that, I'm trying to make those petals a little bit more visible, but at the same time I'm using cool hue. And the reason for that, of course, you now know, is because I want yellow and blue to interplay. So yes, slightly darker, but cool. In that case, my yellow is more yellow. Oh, sorry, I forgot to turn it on. Okay, it's gonna just ring, because it will take me forever to take these gloves off. We can also compare what I'm doing with making a mosaic, with putting little chunks of color in the right kind of way, so the whole thing works at the end. So all I have here is two kinds of blue, two kinds of yellow. Actually, only one kind of yellow. I didn't use my lemon yellow yet. I might not have to, but now that I remember it, I might try. So as you see, our palette is material can do so much. So it's getting closer to the end. Still there are a few things I can do here. I want to use the darkest value for blue in a couple of places still. Now that I have red on my palette, if I have to, I could actually easily make purple, violet, but I'm not going to do that, because as soon as I do that, that would change the whole game here. Picasso used to say, if you are so good as to be able to control 10 elements, go down to only 2. Which means if you are such a good painter that you would use 10, let's say 10 colors, and you can use 10 and still control them, so that's how good you are. But then if you can do that, restrict yourself and go down to only 2. That will make your painting stronger. Okay. So please, if you have any questions, go ahead and ask me, because I'm very soon going to finish this piece. Well, it's just, thank you, but as I mentioned, this is just an exercise I've developed for myself, just so I can loosen up with my painting, and it really helps. Right now we're working in the studio, right? So, and I'm doing this. But it's not, of course, limited to this. Now, after I do these exercises every now and then, when I go plein air, or if I work with a paint model, I use these things that I've learned with this. I've used them for other paintings. It's not about flowers only. I can do anything like this right now. It helps me a lot. So one of my goals, for me, art making, of course, yes, it is what's that word? Self-expression. Of course, it's communication. You are self-expressing, you are communicating, people see what you do, they want to take it home, great, they pay you money, which means you can buy more and more art supplies. So, yes, it's all that, of course. But then also for me, whenever I paint, one of the huge reasons why I do it, it's about self-improvement. Okay, you can do this, and this is not good. What can I do to improve it? And then it's also about solving problems. It's a problem solving. Okay, I have blue, I have yellow, I have black, and I have white. Can I do something exciting with those only? Boom, boom, you try this and that, it doesn't work, then suddenly it works, and you go, oh my God. So it gives you like, you feel good. It's solving problems, just like mathematician will have to solve this theorem, or woodworker will have to solve this problem, how to do this or that, So it's the same thing. It's about self-improvement. And so when you solve that problem, it makes you feel very good, and hopefully it makes your art better, and hopefully then some good people invite you to demonstrate for them and share your experience.